Now, as Russia escalates its invasion of Ukraine, the Foreign Office has announced that the UK will send war crimes experts to investigate atrocities apparently committed by opposition forces.
And of course, this all comes as 2 British charity workers have been reportedly captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. It's understood the volunteers, named as Paul Uri and Dylan Healy, were detained earlier this week at a checkpoint in the south of Ukraine.
Well, meanwhile, NATO's Deputy Secretary-General has warned that it could be years before the war is over, as Britain, as we were reporting yesterday, is sending another 8,000 troops to Eastern Europe.
Well, we've been speaking to locals in Chilwell in Nottingham who live close by to a British Army barracks to hear their thoughts on those exercises.
First of all, I'd like to see a de-escalation. Obviously, everybody would. But in view of what's been emerging about the cares in the surrounding countries, to have support for them, I think, is very prudent, very essential. So it would be very good. I think it will also give some reassurance to the Ukrainians to know that they are not in this alone.
In my opinion, I served in Germany during the Cold War, when we had lots of troops to prevent Soviet expansion, and Putin seems to be carrying on very much the same attitude to expand the Russian Federation back to its old borders. So I think it's vital that we have troops there to deter his aggression.
Well, I'm glad to see the exercising, because I think they're going to need to go in, aren't they? It's just logic, that is. We've sat and watched it every day on the news, and it's horrendous. It's horrifying, isn't it? The kiddies and everything. It's terrible, terrible.
Well, I think what they needed to do was a long time ago is start doing something to threaten them back a little bit, I think, more than anything, because they've just sent a missile straight into a meeting last night saying that it was full of arms and it was just a meeting conference place. So I think, yeah, they need to do something seriously quick, I think. Basically, there's a lot of innocent people getting killed, and it's all right bringing the people over here. I agree with trying to help them, but at the same time, our infrastructure can't take it, the hospitals can't take it, all the extra people here, it needs sorting out pretty quick, I think.
If we don't get actively involved, and if we are just showing that we are willing to keep a presence in the area and that President Putin's actions and statements are not scaring us, then I think that's something, yes, we should be proactive in saying that we will not bow to people bullying. But, especially the last few decades have proven, becoming involved in other countries' issues have been very problematic for both ourselves, the USA especially.
Well, let's get more reaction from a former SAS soldier and author Robin Horsfall. Good morning, Robbie. It's good to see you this morning. Look, it's just interesting, isn't it, getting everyone's views there in Chilwell this morning, that there certainly seems to be, although a bit of a divided view, there does certainly seem to be more willingness to accept that we do, as a country and with our armed forces, we need to prepare to do more.
Well, we're part of an alliance. We don't have the power on our own to make a huge difference. But every country that is connected to this problem and that is willing to stand up to Putin's bullying is going to create a powerful effect, an alliance that will actually prevent the war escalating any further.
The trouble is we are being warned that it's going to become a long war, and it's certainly what it looks like at the moment. And we're going to have more and more and more in that case of incidences like yesterday we heard about the former Royal Marine who has been killed there. Now we have 2 detained aid workers. Things like that are going to accumulate, aren't they?
Well, the first thing is we should beware false prophets. Nobody knows what the future will bring. We try to anticipate. We try to do the best we can under the present circumstances. When we switch from talking about a war down to what's happening to individuals, it confuses the situation. There are going to be people in country that have tragedies. There are going to be people killed. There are going to be British volunteers that know what they're going into when they go into the country, that come across difficult circumstances. But if we're talking about the war aims, the strategic aims of our government, the American government and the European Union in terms of controlling this and making sure that it doesn't get worse, that's a completely different picture.
Yeah, it's interesting to get that. You're absolutely right, but that overall bigger picture, and we do get sort of focused on individuals at times, understandably so. Look, in terms of these exercises and these 8,000 troops, what do you make of all of that? Because on one hand, we're told it's this huge deployment, the biggest since the Cold War. Then on another hand, we're told, well, it's something which was long in the planning. It's just NATO exercises, nothing to get worked up about. What's your assessment of what actually is going to be going on with these troops being deployed over there?
Well, I see it as bolstering the defences of Finland and Sweden, because they're not part of NATO at the moment, and they're vulnerable to have the same actions taken against them if they decide to join NATO, as has happened to Ukraine. So it's about bolstering up their armed forces and deterring Putin from redirecting his campaign against another country to distract us from what he's doing in Ukraine itself, if he has the strength, if he has the arms, if he has the will to do it. But he's throwing threats everywhere. And so moving our armed forces closer to the borders of Finland and Sweden is going to give them some security as well.
Do you think so far, and as a former soldier yourself, do you think so far we're getting it right and doing what we could, or would you play it differently?
I think the aim is to keep the violence contained within the borders of Ukraine, if possible. Once it starts to extend out into Moldova, Transnistria, Poland and other countries, then there's a problem for everybody, because how do you stop it? So the aim at the moment for the alliances is to keep the violence contained in Ukraine, to support them. They have a very effective number of men available to fight their war. We keep supplying them with arms. We keep supplying them with ammunition, heavy artillery. And there's going to be a delay, because when it comes to sophisticated weapons, people need to be trained in their use before they can actually go onto the battlefield. Otherwise, it's a waste of time sending them. Hence the use of old Soviet material, which the Ukrainians are familiar with. But it's an ongoing process. But I think at the moment, the governments are doing everything they possibly can, as quickly as they possibly can, with a great deal of success. We saw the retreat from Kyiv, and we can see that the Russians are struggling to actually mount a counteroffensive in the east. They're making very little progress. It's raining. There's mud, which is very, very bad for armoured vehicles. You've got anti-tank defences dug in depth, waiting for them to come. So the Russians are going to take huge casualties over the next few weeks if they decide to push forward.
OK, Robin Horsfall, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you for
Thank you
your
very much.
insight.
Yeah.